My name's Jennifer Smith. I'm with a company called American Graphics Institute. We do training for design and for, well, pretty much anything, whether it be websites or applications or printed pieces, anything interactive, video. So one of the most popular applications that I am out teaching lots of people how to use is Sketch. It is relatively easy once you get it, and in comparison with some of the other prototyping tools that are out there, it has a lot of features that are unique and can save you hours if not weeks of time if you know how to take advantage of it. How many of you guys use Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop or something similar already? Okay, you'll find that Sketch works very much like Illustrator, and typically if we have clients hiring us, I just half the time. It's like, well, if you already know Illustrator, you're only going to need half the time as somebody else might, just because a lot of the keyboard shortcuts and such are similar. How I'm going to kind of gear this training in this little mini session is around branding things, like how you build things and you maintain your colors and your logos and some of your other artwork and textiles, and then share and use them really quickly to build out additional designs. My background is as a visual designer. I've been in fact, my undergrad is in BFA in communication design, which I always tell people makes me a damn good waitress. But also a UX designer. So for the last 15 years, I've been designing applications for phones, iPads, websites, and such. So anyway, I'm in Sketch, and this is the window that initially starts up. I'm just going to go ahead and choose just a new document. How many of you guys have used Sketch? Okay, great. So it may have confused you at first, the pages thing versus the artboards. You start with one page, you'll get another page if you start using symbols. It was in the past when Sketch first came out that you could only put about 16 artboards on a page, and then it became really slow, and so people started separating things by pages. It's not necessary unless you actually want to use that as an organizational tool. So I have a page up here. I'm just backing out a little bit. I'm using the same keyboard shortcuts you would use if you were in any Adobe app, which is Command minus, and I'm just pressing A. And A, not Command A or anything, just A says, oh, you want an artboard? And I'll just go ahead and I'll click mobile. And then I'm pressing Command 0 to zoom into it, just so that we can see what we're working on. So I'm going to pretend I'm doing something for an organization. It's a security company, and we want to just build from scratch, but we've got some assets such as the logo to start with. And so first of all, I'm just going to go up to the insert drop-down menu, and I'm going to say insert an image, and I'm going to go out to a folder and find a logo. You'll notice that I saved the logo out of Illustrator as an SVG, which is just simply a save. And the reason why is if I save out of Illustrator as an SVG, I can access all the parts of this logo. So you'll see it comes in as a group, and then I can even come in here and dissect the item and go into individual parts and change them, change the color, all that sort of thing. So if you can, it's just a save as, it's not an export feature or anything out of Illustrator. So I've got that in here, and a couple things that I want to do. Maybe I'm going to reuse this logo a lot, and probably many of you are familiar with this, but I can just go up to the workspace up at the top. I've got my control panel, and I can click on create symbol, and it will name it whatever my file name was. I could change it if I want, but I can then click on OK. That's when a second page creates automatically up at the top. It's called symbols, and everything that I do that to will end up on that page. And so the benefit is, of course, that I can reuse this as many times as I want. If I need another logo, I could use a keyboard shortcut that Adobe users are used to. I could option drag this and then option drag it again. Or if I'm on a totally different artboard or someplace else, I can say insert symbol, document, and there it sits right there. And then I can drop it in. The benefit being, of course, that if I wanted to, I could double click on this and it does open up the symbol in that symbols page. And then in here, if somebody told me, well, some of this needs to be changed, I could actually come in here, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit more, try to get a hold of that 1D. You'll see that when I select that 1D, its individual properties come up in the properties panel to the right, and I might just choose in here that I want, for whatever reason, that one letter to be D, that D to be a dark green, and then I can return to the instance, and everything else was updated throughout it. So keeps you consistent. This is only a symbol that's saved in this document. When I'm done working with colors and type styles and that sort of thing, I'll show you that you could actually put this file up on a server and it could be shared with 10 other people, and then you go in and you update that D, and then all the artwork that 10 other people are working on can also be updated by their choice. So again, huge capabilities if you're trying to keep branding standards consistent. Okay, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to undo that. I'm just pressing Command Z over and over again because I really didn't like that D there. And I'm going to continue on, and maybe I don't have any way of getting colors in here other than what I see here. So I'm just going to double click on this, and by double clicking on the group, I can actually, that serves as the same thing as a direct selection tool in Illustrator. Like for instance, I'll just do something really quick here. If I make a rectangle, and by the way, quick keys are really great in Sketch. I just press R and it comes up and says, oh, you want a rectangle. And hold the shift key down and I've got a perfect square. But notice that this acts like the solid selection tool would in Illustrator. But if I double click on it, boom, now it's the direct selection tool. So depending upon, and I can change those corners, of course, I get a totally different properties panel, okay, when I click and I double click on it. Sketch was built to be minimal in design on purpose, which is really nice. And what I find is if I go back to Illustrator, I feel like it's super cumbersome because I've got to switch to the selection tool and then to the direct selection tool and then back again and all kinds of crazy things. And even the alignment and stuff is just much more cumbersome in Illustrator. So I much prefer to work in here. Anyway, why I showed you that was because I wanted to come down here and I actually wanted to access this blue color because I want to use it in something. So I can see now, I just double clicked through and it eventually got down to the blue that was being used. And I can come up here to the top and I can say, you know what, I want to save this. Now, it says create new layer style. And if I did create just a normal layer style, I could say, you know, bulldog blue or whatever. But if I'm trying to keep things consistent and organized so that other people can use this, I can actually create categories in Sketch just by simply naming it something like this. Colors / bulldog blue. And then I'll go in and I'll get the red and I'll say, all right, I want to create a new style, but I have to name it exactly the same thing, like as far as color / bulldog blue, red. This doesn't matter what's after the slash, but you'll see later that when I have this saved and I try to access it later, by simply putting a word and a slash, it'll create a submenu in my menu so that I can find all the colors at once, or I can find all, you know, the things with borders at once or whatever, but it helps me to stay organized. So, all right, I've saved those two things. Let's move on. I'm going to go ahead back to my page. And I've got my logo in here, and maybe I want to use some of this stuff. So I'm going to press the R again. I just want to show you some quick keys as I go through. If I hold down Option and Shift and I click and drag, that creates a perfect square from the center. And this is exactly the same as Photoshop and Illustrator. The reason I like this is because let's say that, I'm going to get rid of, I'm going to actually make just a regular rectangle. Okay, but if I want to size this, notice that if I hold the Option key and grab a corner, it also sizes it to the center. So typically you might go like this and then have to reposition it or whatever. So maybe I'm putting something in here. We'll say that maybe this is going to be a menu item at the bottom or whatever. But I'm going to apply that color. And so I'm going in and I'm choosing the Bulldog blue color. I'm positioning it. I'm going to press Command minus once, pull this down a little bit, make it a little bigger. But the other thing I want you to notice is that if I have this off center a little bit, showing you how the minimal design really helps you, you'll notice that up in the line, I can just say center. Like I don't have to say align to Artboard or center to selection or whatever. It's intuitive in that way where it's like, oh, okay, you want to center it, you have nothing else selected, so you must want to center it to the Artboard. So it makes that easy. Okay, so I'm going to go in and place an image in here. So I'm just using insert image again. You can choose the menu at the top, or you can just simply use the menu that's down in the control panel. But I'm going to choose image and just find an image to use here. Just a bunch of little dogs. Okay. So a couple of things that I like to see. First of all, this happens typically, you place something, you're like, wow, I don't even need the rest of that size, that image. It's probably going to create a file size when I save this of 1 gig by the time I'm done if I take all these big images in. So a couple things I can do. Going back to that click and double click thing, I can double click on it and that brings up my cropping tools. And if you notice right now there's a marquee selection or there's a magic wand. I'm just going to take the marquee and say I really only want this in the image, and then I click crop and the rest is gone. And it really is gone. And the other benefit is I can go to layer and I can choose image. And if I brought in something that was like 4 meg that I'm not going to need, I can go to layer image and say minimize the file size. In this case, this is at the smallest file size, but many times I have clients who bring in humongous files and then they have huge files when they save them out. So we've got that in here. And again, I could save that as a symbol if I want. In this case, I'm probably only going to use that one time. Okay, so I'm going to fix this a little bit. I am going to click off so that I get my selection tool back again. And I'm going to go ahead and put some additional information in here. Maybe I want to put some logos or something down at the bottom. I'm going to just make up some logos. Like I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and I'm holding down spacebar and command key and just clicking and dragging, just like in Illustrator. So I can zoom in. Thinks that's as far as it wants to go. Interesting. Okay, we'll go this way. And I can create things right in here. Like for instance, if I go and I put a rectangle in, maybe I want to create a cheap, cheesy icon for the home. I can just take a square, and I can also come in here. Let's see, we'll do shape, we'll do a triangle, and I'll hold down my option key and pull that from the center. Okay, so I'm going to select both of these, and I'm going to say that I want to align them to the center, and maybe I'll just make this a little bit smaller. So this is my really bad home button, but the cool thing is right in Sketch, I can come up to the very top and click on Union. That's like the Pathfinder in Illustrator. That's now one shape. And you'll notice that if I go over, I can say, oh, the fill is white, but I also want a border. So instead of using the word stroke, which nobody understands who doesn't work in Adobe products, it uses border, and you'll see that the border, we'll come in here and make it a little bit thicker so you can see it, but it's going around the whole thing, you know, so it is actually unioned. But if you look over in my layers panel, it is still 2 separate objects that I could move if I want to. So another thing I just want to mention, if you are a designer who's starting to use Sketch, the worst thing you can do is do what I'm doing and just like let things be named whatever they are in the layers panel, because this does have to go to a developer. And if you don't keep the names in the naming convention that they prefer, and you don't name objects, it can become really confusing for them. So something that's helpful is that if you simply have something selected, like I have that button selected, all I have to do is press Command R, and then I can call this home, and I'll do underscore button. You have to really talk to your development team to see what their naming conventions are, because if I was actually sending this out to somebody and they were using what's snake case is when you use the underscore and no upper cases, and then camel case is when you use the uppercase. Like they probably have, any of you guys developers in here? Okay, do you have like a system that you always use consistently, like all lowercase or camel case? No? Depends, just no spaces, right? As long as, yeah, just no spaces. Because what I can actually do with this is, like once I've created that, I could come over here to the right and I could just click on this little plus sign, and I just made that exportable. And so as I'm working, I could say, oh, they're going to need that asset, and I can click on make exportable. If I go back to my preferences, just general preferences, and I go under presets, I choose one time, like in my preferences, how I want to save all my files. Like I can say, oh, I want to save them in 3 different sizes for iOS, or just one size, or Android. You can customize these to whatever you want. But when I went over there and I clicked on that house icon, and I said make exportable, it just tagged it so that later when I'm ready to send this to the developer, it'll be all ready to go. Like it'll be in a pile and it will collect in an asset folder, which I can give them. Couple things here to think about, and I don't have Zeppelin in here. Any of you guys familiar with Zeppelin? Okay, do you use it?
I haven't, but the designer, visual designer I work with most frequently has used it.
Yeah.
I'm aware of it.
So that, somebody else raised their hand too. Is that you? Do you use it? No. Okay, so let me tell you guys what it is. Because if I'm the designer and I'm making all of this, I could, and I don't actually have it on here, but I could actually come down here and say Zeppelin, export selected, or I can export the entire Artboards, and when they open it up, they can actually copy the code for CSS and positioning and everything, and that's when it's even more critical that you name things and that you have them actually positioned perfectly where you want them on that Artboard. But there are so many cool ways that now you can communicate with your developer as a designer. But the first step that you have to take is really understanding those layers and understanding that you just can't leave things named random things like you could if you use Photoshop, where you would have copy of layer and copy and copy of layer and so on. So anyway, I've got this icon here, and I'm going to also just put another little rectangle in here because maybe I'm going to make this really ugly, but I want to put in, it's not letting me get a hold of this. All right, I want to put a door in here, but I want the door to be subtracted out. So I select both of those, and you'll see that I can also press subtract, and that will minus out whatever I have in front. But again, it gets added in here, and if I wanted to, I could still click on this, and I could, oops, let me get a hold of it, and I could still nudge it around using the arrow keys, to make that even a better icon if I wanted to. So I'm going to take this whole thing, combine shape, and I'm going to press Command R, and I'm going to call it home button, because I think I accidentally called something else that. There we go. I wasn't paying attention. There we go. But if I want to save that as a symbol, I can just click on create symbols as well. It'll come up with a name, click OK, gets added to that other page. You'll see that they just start adding up in there. Okay, so I'm going to just pretend that I want this, on every page. I'm going to create another page here. I'm selecting the Artboard. Easiest way to select the Artboard is just to click on the name of it, either on the layers panel or up at the top, and then hold down your option key and drag it. The second one, I'm going to create a little bit of a gallery in it. I don't need that picture, but I want to put in some people from our staff. So I'm going to insert one image, and the image I'm going to select, I'll just take one of our managers here and slide it down and position it over here. This is when I really like the option slide because it stays, again, in position. But maybe I want to put her name in here too. So using keyboard commands, I just press T, not Command T, just T, and I click. If you want a area, like a text area, you click and drag, just like Illustrator. but I'll put in here manager's name for right now and slide it over. Okay, so maybe I want to use this as a symbol too. In fact, not that this is going to make it prettier, but just adding stuff to this. I'm going to say insert, and in this case, I'm going to go ahead and just put a line underneath this, just so that we have another element that you can see. I'm going to change the color of that line and make it a little thicker. Okay, so I'm taking this whole thing and I'm saying you're now a symbol, and it's going to be manager list. Okay, so I'm selecting it and I'm holding down my option key and I'm dragging it down. If I do this and I like the spacing between there, I can just press Command D, Command D, Command D, Command D. This is the same thing that works in Illustrator. It actually repeats using the exact same distance. I'm looking at this now, I'm like, I need to move this down. I need to make this artboard bigger because maybe I want to scroll it. So to create scrolling, I just go down to the bottom and I carefully take the bottom handle and I pull it. I can't change the width because as soon as I change the width, it pops out of being that specific layout and then it won't scroll. So I just pull it down a little bit. I'm going to take these, move them down to the bottom. Yep, that looks good. And come back up here. And now the Command D won't work anymore. So I'm going to hold down my option key, but see how it gives me the little guide saying that's the same distance right there. And then Command D, and continue on. We'll go down there. Just by me doing that, if you notice, I can go up and I can preview this. It scrolls, okay? Now that bottom thing is still moving. I can just make sure that's all grouped. Maybe I've got 4 icons on here or whatever, but I can take this and I can group it, and then I can press Command R and I can call it bottom tools or whatever I want to call it. But then I can go over to the properties panel and say, can you fix that when scrolling? So now what I've got is, see how it goes behind it. So you can do that for anything. You can put that as an item on top or bottom, or some people use it to show some cool scrolling effects. All right, so let's take this a little further. I made this a symbol, but obviously I don't want to put the same picture in the same text over and over again. One thing you should note is that symbols in Sketch allow you to override things. So you'll see that I can come in here and say, oh, in this one, I actually want to put Kim Lee, and it'll just change that one. So it overrides whatever's in there. But yet, if I were to go back in and say, oh, that text just isn't working out, let's go ahead and change this to a different typeface. Maybe we want just regular. And then I go back to the page. It doesn't matter. You know, it changes, it updates all that style. So makes that really easy. The other thing is it does this with images as well. So I can say, oh, I actually want to put this person in here. And in the most, it won't let me get a hold of that guy. Yeah, that's okay. I'd have to go back and edit that in the symbols. But in the last 6 months, they've also added something else that's really helpful, and that's called data. Like for instance, I can take this and take all these pictures, all these symbols, and I can say, I just want to put some people's pictures in here. This is random, by the way, how it works, but I can take this and say, data, I want you to put all the pictures of the managers in here. And it just automatically populated it. Now that folder of managers is something that I added. So all you need to do, and I'll show you this real quickly, all you need to do is create a folder full of images. So if I come in here, and you'll notice that if I go into this file, I have a folder called managers that has just pictures in it. And all I need to do in order to get that into my data folder is simply go under Sketch Preferences, and let me get out of this, and go to Data, and say, can you add data? And then just select that folder. That's it. Okay, so it's pretty cool. So you can put, if you're coming up with product shots or anything like that, you don't actually have to go find them. It is random, okay? But Craft, I don't know if any of you guys use the Craft plugin. InVision offers the Craft plugin. They also have something in here. This is the plugin over here. They also have a data folder, and in their data folder, you can actually check a box to say stay in order. So if I have to actually align a product picture with the text, then I probably want it to stay in order, you know, and I name it appropriately, like 01, 02, 03, 04, because I can also put text in as data. So if I take this, and I select the text, or all the symbols, doesn't matter, it recognizes it, and then I say data, and I put managers in. Oops, that's the wrong one. Let me put managers 2 in. Okay, there we go. It will also do that with text. Okay, so here's the thing. All I had to do was, for that text, simply go in. This is it in Word. That's it. So you can put any text you want in as data, and you just put a hard return after everything, and it recognizes that as the end, and you just have to save it as plain text out of Word. So you can create anything you want, like locations or product shots or people or whatever you want in order to create that randomness in your file. Okay.
Can I ask a question about the line?
Yeah.
Is there a way to color the line based on the symbols of the colors you already defined?
Well, like when it's already symbol?
Well, yeah, like you selected the color from a color bank of just like local colors.
Yeah,
Can
yeah.
you select it from your actual, like.
Yes. So if I click on it, I can, what I do is say use that color.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Oops. I did the fill. Let me do the stroke.
This is what's happening.
Oh, no, you have to have, I didn't have a stroke defined on that. I could do that. If I come in here and I say right now, I want a new style, I would have to call it red stroke. When I saved my style, it was only a fill.
Oh, it has to be a stroke style.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So now this will work. So if I were to come in here and create a rectangle and then say use that.
It's just that.
Yeah, yep. Okay, so moving on with this. Let's go back to the file. I'm going to go back to page 1. All right, so we've created this so far where we've got symbols, we've got saved colors. Maybe I even want to come in and save the text style that I've selected. So I can even select the text and say, you know, I also want to create a new text style. And I can call this name text or whatever. But it's going to automatically absorb all these properties here that have been selected into that style so that I can reuse it over and over again as much as I want. The other benefit is this. I'll go back to page 1, and let's say that over here I'm going to use that text style. So I'm pressing T, and I'm going to just create a text area this time. This is copy that is describing the security company. Okay, so I go in and I say, you are also using the name text. Let me select it. There we go. All right, and I'll use that several times. I'll create several instances just by option dragging this around. So you'll notice though, if I come in here and somebody says that text is just too small, I can come in and I can increase it. And then it says over here, do you want to, let me make sure I really get this. Select all. There we go. I'm going to take some here that I have not independently messed around with. Come on, escape. There we go. If you ever get stuck in Sketch, it's not a perfect product. Just press the escape key. All right, so an asterisk appears and it says, okay, you've done something to that text. You've changed it. Do you want to update this? And if I click on update, it's going to update every instance. So this is similar to, you know, a lot of other Adobe products that you might use. Or I could say, no, I don't really want to update that. Can you reset it to go back to where it was? Or, and here, let me go ahead and make this a little bit bigger. By the way, the keyboard shortcut to visually making your text bigger and smaller in Sketch is Command Option +, +, which is different than the Adobe products, or minus. But I could also come in here and say, create a new one from this because I want a version, and this is name text version 2 or whatever. Okay, so keep in mind that when I created those styles, the object styles, earlier, I put color / in front of it. I can do that virtually with anything. Like I could come in here and say, all right, sometimes I want this to be red or orange or some other color. We'll slide it into red. And in this case, I want to create a new text style, and this is going to be called alerts and red. And maybe I want to do one more just so that we have a couple things in here. And this is also going to be create new text style, alerts, and this is purple. Now, I had to be careful when I was naming these in order to get those to work. You can also at any time go down to organize text styles, and you'll notice that you can change the name anytime you want. You can delete them. So like if you accidentally did lowercase for one and uppercase for the other, and you want to change it, you can do that all in there. Okay, so let's take this a little further. I'm going to go ahead and save this, and I'm going to save it as my brand standards. Could just be a file that somebody created. I'm also going to come in here and I'm going to create some additional icons. And the icons I'm going to make, let me see if I got one in here. We'll just go into Illustrator and I'll just go find some that are already done in here because I want to maintain the vector capability of them. So let me see if I have an Illustrator file here. There we go. NRG logo, that's not really what I want. Okay, sample icons, that's what I wanted. Okay, but what I want you to notice is that, oh, that's a much better home mic. That if I copy these items from Illustrator and then I come back and I paste them, it does maintain the vector capability. You'll see that it does import what's called a group, and in here I can still double click and I can kind of narrow down my selection to an individual item, and I can change color or shape or whatever else. So whether you save as an SVG and use the insert image, or you just cut and paste, you're going to still be able to edit those items as vectors. Okay, so the reason I did this was because I wanted to create just a couple more symbols. So I'm going to have this selected. I'm going to make sure that I've got it called something other than group. I'm going to call it Command R, chat, and then I'm going to create it as a symbol, but this time I'm going to just put in icon, chat, and I'll do one more, and then we're going to create this as a library. I'll just take this one, copy, paste it, and Command R, we'll call this one play, and also take this and make it a symbol, but this time I want to make sure I call it icon / play. Okay, I'm going to get rid of it. I don't even need it. So if you're creating a file that you want lots of people to use that has logos on it and colors and that sort of thing, you really only have to put the items down. They don't even have to be in an artboard. You can just put them down, save them as symbols or save them as styles or whatever. It's nice to see them so that people know what to reference, but I just added that and I deleted it, but it's still in my symbols. So this is what I want to do. I am saving this, updating the save, my brand standards, and I am closing it. And I'm going under the preferences, and there is one thing I want to mention to you guys, because I am going into the preferences now, and I want you to notice that under general, there's something that absolutely drives me crazy. I uncheck this all the time, autosave. I don't know if that drives you crazy, but you could open up some other version and be working on it, thinking you're going to do a save as, and you don't do the save as, and it overwrites your original one. So this takes that away, which is really helpful. So I always have that off. But the other thing that I'm going to do in here is I'm simply going to say I'm creating a library. And you can see I have libraries in here. I'm going to uncheck some of these. I don't really need them. But I'm going to add a library, and I'm going to go find that file that I created, which, dummy, I don't even know where I saved it. Let me open this real quickly. Open recent. There it is. Oh, I found it. Okay. So it added it as a library, and what that means is that now, no matter what document I'm creating, if I'm in Sketch, I can access all those things that I just saved. So I come in, I say, all right, new, making a new artboard, I press A, I choose what I want to use. I come in here, I want to put that logo in, I say insert, symbol, there's the name of the file. There is, oh, no, that's it, right, here it is. There's the name of the logo, and I place it, and there it is. I go to insert, and you'll notice that when I go to insert the icon, do you see that by calling it icon / now it grouped all the icons together? So if I had like 16 things that were specific to one thing, they would all be collected together. You can keep putting slashes. You could have icon, new, special, you know, like it doesn't matter. You can have, and it will keep going down into submenus, but makes it really easy to find these things. So I take this maybe, and I want to put this in. Even when I come back to things like maybe I want to go ahead and put an oval in, so I press O, I'm holding down my Option and Shift key, pulling from the middle, and I go up to style, you'll see that here's my brand standards. See how all my branding colors are together, and all I had to do that was make a shape, fill it with my branding colors, and name it colors, you know, red or whatever. But in here, I can easily say, oh, I want to use that color now. And then if I want to put text in, same thing, put some text in. This is my type, and make it a little bit bigger, Command Option +. In here, I can of course come into the text style and say, there it is, branding standards, and I want to use this text. Okay, does that make sense? So the benefit being, and why this makes Sketch so successful, is that somebody could be managing our branding standards, and they can go out and update that other file, and then you get the option, you get a little message saying, do you want to update your logo? Like, you don't have to, but you know that something's been updated so that you can keep everything consistent and standard throughout. Does that make sense? So all those things, like there's so many different places that you can save things, and that's what makes, go ahead.
If that file is changed, then will it incorporate it into your library, or do you have to come back and
No, it's live, it's dynamically connected forever and ever and ever. So other things that you can do, like I don't know if you've ever heard of sticker sheets. I think I have one in here. Yeah. But there are, you have the opportunity, if you do like, if you search for Google Material sticker sheet or Apple iOS sticker sheet, they will give you a bunch of controls on a page in Sketch. So you can choose that you want the sticker sheet in XD, Sketch, Photoshop, or Illustrator. So if you download the Sketch one, it's just a Sketch file where all the controls have already been saved as symbols. And then you go and you define that as a library, and then when you want to use like a drop-down menu, you can actually go to your symbols to the name of that file and put one that's already made.
A plugin for that.
No plugin. You just need the file. And they give it to you. I don't know if I can search in here, but they give you all of these done. Here, I'll search up here and see if I have one already on here. Sticker. Yeah, here's sticker sheet. See? It's just a file that has, this is the Google Material one, but that way I don't have to create all these things. I can just save that file as a library and then have access to all those different, like they have the radio buttons broken down into individual symbols or the whole dialog box or whatever. But, you know, the issue I always have with Sketch as a prototyping tool, and same with XD, is that you have to create all the UI. Like if you're using Balsamic or some of the other prototyping tools, Axure, they give them to you, you're just dragging and dropping them. Here, you have to make them. So I try to avoid making them as much as possible by pulling up these sticker sheets from different, you know, from Apple and from the Google. And these, the material design are meant for Android, but they're really plain and they're almost platform agnostic. So you could almost use them for a website or for a mobile app, you know, whether it's on an iOS device or not. Okay, so let's see. I think I am almost done with covering all that stuff. Let me make sure. All right. Textile libraries. Okay, so that's all the branding stuff I wanted to show you. I'm just going to show you some other tips while I'm in here, just because I've got the time, and some other things that I think are really helpful. Like for instance, I'm going to go ahead and make my rectangle again, and I'm going to pretend that I'm building a tool down here, and actually I'm going to put it at the top because I want to put a really bad hamburger menu in. And don't tell me about the usability of the hamburger menu. I already know. I just need something here. So, all right, so I'm taking this and then I am option dragging it, and then I'm pressing Command D. Just like Illustrator and everything else, you can group these things. One thing I think is really cool, do you see that when I selected all three of those, these little kind of elongated pill shapes appeared between each one? That's because even if I don't have them, you know, done as a repeated object or whatever, I can continue to change the size or the space between them by just simply clicking and dragging it up and down. The other thing is that if I wanted to, of course, use this, I should probably group it. So I'm pressing Command G, and then I'm pressing Command R, and I'm calling it Burger. So again, just showing you how quick and easy it is to work in here. But the reason I'm showing you this is because if I click on this artboard and I am changing the size of it, it like has no reaction to that. I want you to notice that if I select this rectangle, that over here in the properties, I can say, I want you to resize, here, we'll leave it, just the width on the left and the right. I want you to pin this to the edge. In fact, I'll pin you to the top too. But I can also say that I want it to resize. I'm going to turn off the resize on the vertical, and come on. Oh, it's just going to be pinned, so it's okay. But now, since I pinned it to the sides, you'll see that now it stretches. So that's not a big deal. You know, like that's helpful, but this guy got really kind of crazy. So if I select him, I can also say pin in the upper left and the right, and don't resize at all. And now what I've got is something that looks like this. Okay? So where that's helpful is this. You don't really, when you preview in here, I'm previewing this by clicking on the preview button. I'm not really able to resize it here, but where that really helps is that when you're creating designs, because I can take this guy, I just option dragged it, and I can go over and say, how would you look as a tablet? And you see, the other items I didn't touch, but those two items now just snapped. And so if I was creating tools or menu items or anything like that, it would automatically fit it without me having to manually do it. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. So, going back to this, let's see. A couple other things that I just want to show you in here for those of you who are used to using Illustrator and such. Let me just back out a little bit. And in fact, I'm going to get rid of this guy because these, I didn't tell them what to do, so they got all distorted. I'm going to go ahead and put an image in, And so I'm using the insert menu. I'm saying image. I'm going to go ahead and place a location in here. And maybe I want to put this, and you'll notice this happens in Sketch a lot, like it falls off the artboard sometimes, and then you can't see it. But it shows you very clearly over here what's on the artboard. So if you have something selected and it's just living on its own out here, that's not, you know, when I preview this or whatever, it's not going to show up. But when I drag it, it falls back into the hierarchy here. A couple other things, there's your visibility here, and if you hold down your Option key, that becomes a lock. So if you're trying to lock things or make them visible or not. This is what I wanted to show you though. I'm going to make this guy a little bit smaller. So let me, I locked him. Let me unlock him. And I'm going to hold down my Option key and Shift key to pull him into the center. And I'm going to make an oval. I'm going to pull it from the center by holding down Option and Shift. There we go. And then I'm going to select them both. And I am going to use mask. I selected some. I have a third item selected here. Let me make sure that I do not do that. Mask. There we go. So if you're used to doing things in Illustrator and you think you can't do a lot of that stuff in here, you can pretty much do anything you want in Sketch that you can do in Illustrator, even using the pen tool. Because you'll see that under Insert Vector, it gives you a whole bunch of tools for doing vector shapes. But there's even a pen tool that you can use, and it works very much like the pen tool in Illustrator. So if you wanted to create a closed shape to make your own custom mask, you could do that as well, or paths, or whatever you want. So I, from personal experience, can say that once working in Sketch and building all this stuff, because of all these capabilities that I have for saving things and styles and such, I almost hate going back to Illustrator. It seems like it's very cumbersome. It's very slow. I have to click 3 times to do something, and I have to click once on in here. But that's, you know, up to you as you get more experience in it, making that decision. One other thing I'll show you, and then I think our time's going to be up, but I think this is really critical. There's a plugin that costs money, but if you just download the free version, it gives you something called Stacks. This is huge when you're trying to save time working. So it's called Anima, and you won't be able to take advantage of every one of the features in it without paying for it, but watch what I can do. I've got this image here. I'm going to put some text in. I'm going to say this is my text. I do have a Lorem Ipsum generator too, but oops, I'm not going to use it right here. I'm just going to copy that text. Copy and just paste it down a bunch of times. All right, so this is typical, and you might experience this when you're building anything, but I'm taking this and then I'm holding down my Option key and I'm putting this in here and in here, and I'm selecting all these items and I'm saying, all right, I want you to stack, and they all go into one stack. Now here's the benefit. Somebody says, oh, we need more copy up here, or we need another picture. That would be a pain because I'd have to reposition everything, but notice I can Option drag this and drag it down, and it now changes. It keeps everything in a stack. And then if I delete something, everything moves up. So, but it's all in here. So if you don't want it in the stack, you can just drag it out and get rid of it. That's huge when you're designing web pages or anything where you're adding copy or deleting it. And that's another thing that you do as a designer, is like nudge stuff down, nudge it back up, worry about the spacing in between. But you can set your padding in here and everything and put all your stuff in as elements and drop it in or out. So it's another one I would suggest. So I think I'm done. Does anyone have any questions? Did that all make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. I'm entirely self-taught on Sketch, so getting actual organizational tips. Do you have any recommendations for annotations? How to handle those?
Annotations? Like, wait, what are you trying to do exactly?
So I'm moving to a new workflow where I wireframe a sketch so that the visual designer can just take those wireframes.
Yeah.
But I'm a UX designer. I need people to annotate how things are actually going to work.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wait, you want to just add content to describe how things are working and that sort of thing?
Exactly. So it's a thing I do constantly.
I believe, and I may be wrong in this, but, okay, no. I thought that I thought that Zeppelin has some features in that. What I typically do is export the artboards to PDF, and I put the notations there as comments. Yeah, because I don't know of any other easy way to do it.
Yeah, I've been looking into it. There's one wireframe toolkit that I downloaded that seemed to have some tips for it. So I just haven't had time to really.
There's
dive.
so many plugins, and if you guys are looking for stuff, you just go under plugins to manage plugins, and then you say get plugins, and then there's a search window there, and you can type in, you know, Lorem Ipsum or whatever you want, and it'll come up with all the available plugins for you. But not all of them are good, and not all of them are up to date.
It's like it's
They
just
don't
like
upgrade them.
They don't, because they're individuals. They're not. It's like the Wild West. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. Well, if you have any questions, let me know. I think I have to get out for somebody else. But yeah, good luck with it all.